Before you start watching this video, can I just say that I'm going to have a go at doing a bit of welding, and I'm not much good at it, so I wouldn't take too much notice of anything I do or say. In my last video, I mentioned how this strut had come adrift from the frame and would need refitting, and I discussed whether to bolt it or weld it. Well, I'm going to have a go at welding it today, so in this video you'll see me struggling with the welding tool. Well, I've done a bit of welding, not very good. I can't see what I'm doing with this mask on, that's the trouble. I reckon that'll do the job actually. It worked, and it feels strong. What could be better? That's not too bad actually. A bit of paint on it, you won't even see it, as long as it holds it together. I've got to try the other side now. All the professional welders out there are saying, what the hell is that bloke doing? Saying he hasn't got a clue. And they'd be right. But if it holds it together, it don't really matter, do it? It's not going to show. It's underneath. I'll have a bit of paint on it. It looks awful. Well, I think it does. But then I'm not a welder, am I? I'm going to put the camera in so you can see my awful efforts. Thing is, it might look ropey, but it's held that strut on. It's got to be better than it was before anyway, isn't it? We'll have to see. Well, this is my next problem. It's this piece along here. As you can see, it's pretty rusted up. There's holes all the way through. I'm a bit worried about that. It's pretty ropey, especially that middle bit where the turntable rests on. And there. See, this piece here, this front piece of the turntable is resting on there. Now, there's several ways of doing it. I could weld something on there, but knowing my welding skills, it'll be a failure. And there's not much to weld to. What I'm thinking is, I'm going to try and find some angle iron or some Dexion and fit a piece along there and either bolt it. Perhaps I'll do a few spot welds, have another go at it. Or if necessary, I'll put some countersink bolts through to hold it on there to strengthen it somewhat. I can bolt it to this piece actually, and at least it'll give the timber decking something to sit onto. So I think that's about the only way. Right, well, I've had a poke about in the shed and I found a couple of pieces that might do the job. First piece is this bit of Dexion I found, which is quite strong. It's not like the normal shelving stuff, it's really strong. I could cut that off and fit that in there. I could bolt it through this front piece. That would certainly be strong enough to hold the deck of the trailer in place. The other thing I found in there, which might be better, is a good hard strong piece of actual angle iron without any holes in. Again, that almost seems made for the job. I could chop that off to size, drill some holes through and then bolt it, and I reckon that would do the job. In fact, I think that's probably the best way, because it's the right height and everything. It's almost identical to the stuff that's on there. So I think what I'm going to do is get the angle grinder set up and cut it off and offer it up and see what it looks like. Always wear your goggles when you're doing that, mind. Those little bits, they fly up and get in your eyes, and that seems to fit in quite nicely. The only thing is that there's a bit of a gap here, probably because it doesn't go up into the corners. So what I'll do, I'll get the angle grinder with a grinding tool on, and I'll round the corners off, chop a bit off this end and a bit off the other end, and just round it up so that it fits in nicely in there as tight as possible, because I don't really want a gap there if I can avoid it. Anyway, I reckon that'll do the job. It will certainly support the decking better than what's already there, and it will take the pressure off this piece. So what I'm going to do now is round these corners off. Just a little point about angle grinding. When you're cutting, you use a thinner disc like this. This is a metal cutting wheel, and you can see it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. This is a grinding wheel, which is the same sort of material, but it is quite considerably thicker. That's 3/16 of an inch, I suppose, and it's much safer grinding. So don't try using a cutting disc for grinding, because they're not really strong enough and it might fly off and hit you or something. And make sure when you're changing the wheels, unplug it first, because it's quite easy to switch it on accidentally and you could catch your hand. I'm just going to take this nut off and I'll swap it for the grinding disc. Take that off. I've got one partly used, so I'll use that one. There we go. That's one side done. Turn it over and do the other side now. Well, I've ground the angle iron down and I've cleaned off some of the paint from a couple of areas, and what I'm going to do is attempt to put some welds on to hold it in place rather than using bolts. Now, I've never done this before, so it's probably all going to go horribly wrong. What I've done, I've taken the paint off in a couple of places on this piece and the actual framework, hopefully so it'll get a good connection for the welder, and I'm going to use some of these little clamps to hold it on while I'm doing it. Well, I've done a little bit of welding, but unfortunately I forgot to turn the camera on first, so you can't see it, but it doesn't look too bad. So what I'm going to do is have another go and see how I get on. The main problem is when I put a new welding rod in, it's so long and flexible and it jumps about, and then it strikes, makes me jump, and then I lose the weld. Well, I'm glad I had a go at doing the welding. I haven't done it very well, admittedly, but I've done the job and it'll serve the purpose. It'll hold that piece of angle iron in place, and once I got the wood on top and the bit of paint on it, you won't notice too much difference. And the main thing is I'm not worried so much what it looks like, as long as it doesn't fall apart when I first use it, because I want to use the thing. That's my main interest, not renovate it to look pretty. Earlier I mentioned these two handle fittings and the fact that the washers were loose and they would just pull through the holes. What I've done, I've actually taken the washers and cleaned them up, and I've welded them onto the rods now, onto the fittings. I welded them onto the fittings so that they won't pull through, so I hope that'll do the job. Another thing I found out since, and it's always too late, isn't it? When I was moaning earlier about my welding, I've got this welding helmet, and you can't see a thing when you've got the shield down, but I had the sun behind me and I thought that would help light up what I'm actually welding. But in fact the reverse is true, and for the last bit of welding, what I did, I put an old overall over the back of my head to stop the sun shining through, and then I could actually see what I was doing. It's too late now, I've done the welding, but in future I shall remember that. Keep the light out, it's better. Well, after a lot of hard work, I've got most of the rubbing down done now. I've done the welding. The only thing I've got left to do is to fit a bracket on the front piece where the turntable is, so that I can tow it with a little tractor. But I can't really do that until I've got it finished with the wheels on, because I don't know what height to put it yet. But basically I think I'm ready to start putting some paint on it, but it's too late today to start, so I'll probably start tomorrow providing it's a fine day.